Welcome back to the list. Something very unusual is happening when it comes to our nation's commitment to the war in Afghanistan. This week, President Obama got a $59 billion emergency spending bill that he wanted, but he had to go around 102 Democrats who were trying to block it. Now, hold that thought for a minute, because that's not the real story here. Tonight, I want to take you through the Republican side of this, because when it comes to military spending, you'd expect oftentimes the GOP to take a hawkish stand, at least in the last decade or so, never wanting to be seen as saying no to the troops. But 12 House Republicans also voted against the funding. That's important. Among them, Utah's Jason Chaffetz, part of the movement among some conservatives who now want us out of Afghanistan. Now, that list includes better-known names as well. Look at what Ann Coulter, no stranger to this program, wrote this month. She joined Michael Steele in calling the conflict Obama's war. And Ann concludes, judging by other recent Democratic ventures in military affairs, the war isn't likely to turn out well. Here's another one. Commentator George Will has been beating the drum for almost a year now. Listen to what he said last September. Afghanistan would need hundreds of thousands of coalition troops, perhaps for a decade or more. That is inconceivable. That's George Will. Those are his words. A longtime Republican critic of the war, one who also calls it Obama's war, is Texas Congressman and former presidential candidate Ron Paul. This is going to be making a lot of news because it's very controversial. I don't know if you've had a chance to see the cover of Time magazine. I'm going to show it to our viewers now. On this cover, there is a woman, a beautiful woman. Apparently, the Taliban took her and cut her nose and her ears off for leaving a relationship with a man who was abusing her. We've heard the stories of what the Taliban did. They don't want girls to learn. They can't go to school. They're not allowed to read books. They beat them. They punish them. And the fear is, we leave, they start doing that again. And a lot of people would say, how can we leave then? Is that okay with you?
Well, it's not okay, but the alternative isn't any better, because if we leave or stay, there's still going to be more killing. I think there's more killing when we stay. And worst thing, it wasn't just the Taliban and their Sharia law. It was the husband that did it. I mean, this is so horrible and cruel. But, you know, there's so many injustices in the world, and how you correct injustice is the question.
We know now that we've spent $1 trillion between Iraq and Afghanistan. And you're starting to read suggestions now in American newspapers that what it costs to keep one soldier over there equipped for a year is tantamount to what it would take to keep 20 schools running there for a year. Now, you know, you start doing the math and you say, well, so would you be in favor of shifting the emphasis from a military emphasis to something more of a Peace Corps type emphasis, where we send Americans in there to help them? But then that too is kind of nation building, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And from my philosophy and from the Constitution, I would say no. But I had a conversation today with Barbara Lee that disagrees with me, but we agree on the war, stop the war and do more of the social help. And I said, you know, the one position I have is if you can cut the money from the war and save some money and actually cut the deficit, and you shift it to that type of activity, I would support that as a transition. I wouldn't endorse it philosophically, and I don't want to start a new program. But if you want to work away from the violence, and it would be much better to do medical help in schools than it would be to bomb people with drones and expanding the war like we're doing in Pakistan.
You know what I want to know from you? Here's what I want to know. I want to know how many Republicans come up and whisper to you their support for this position that you've long taken on the war in both Afghanistan and Iraq, that they can't say publicly?
Well, I'm sworn to secrecy. I'm not allowed to say.
He went on to say, in fact, that several of them do come up to him and whisper in his ear the very thing that oftentimes they don't feel comfortable enough voting for or saying publicly about the war in Afghanistan. Well, tonight, the man I put on the list...